Hi, everyone. Welcome to PeopleMetrics Live. Today, we're reviewing the 3 best ways to improve pharma customer experience, or CX, via patient support services programs. So, Kirk, over the last few years, we know the pharmaceutical industry has been investing heavily in patient support services programs. Are we seeing any positive results come from those large investments?
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to start, patient support services certainly are critical, especially for new treatments and helping patients navigate and ensuring they adhere. We see this just in the adherence of patients, but as well, it's there now in patient expectations. There was an Accenture study that found that 76% of patients expect for their pharma provider to offer these support services. So it's not just, they're producing results, but it's now they're producing these expectations. So you need to make sure, that investment is there and that investment is paying off. I think what we would say about the patient support space is that there is a lot of investment. However, it's not being used as well as it could be. And the real reason for that is that pharma patient support groups aren't doing enough what we call pharma CX, which is intentionally creating ongoing measurement and managing of feedback from your end customer of patients, caregivers, and HCPs. And that is currently a big gap in a lot of patient support providers, in that patient support services often do quality assurance with their hub. They may do call listening or collect occasional feedback, but there is no regular ongoing process for customer experience feedback, which is something that's really fundamental if you think of any other experience world, of if you go to a hotel or if you go to a coffee shop, is that they're collecting feedback about your experience, but is missing in that pharma experience world. So yes, they're getting something out of the investment. However, there is kind of a big blind spot in making sure they're actually addressing patient needs and that they're not doing that pharma CX component.
Right, because a lot of the feedback that you're collecting, the point of feedback collection isn't necessary. I mean, it's good to be collecting feedback, but the end result and what you do with the information, learning about what's working, what's not working, that's the ultimate end goal of doing a program like this, right?
Yes, absolutely. And one other thing from that Accenture study that I mentioned, there was one metric of 85% of pharma companies expect to increase their investment in patient support services. Now, in order to adequately drive that investment to make sure it's going to the correct places, you do need to make sure you're collecting feedback from that end customer, from patients, from caregivers, from HCPs, in order to determine where that investment is going to go. Now, in a big sense, generally the broad strokes of all these patient support services, they're going to have some things, and some will have certain services, some will not. But it's generally around financial support and access support. So the underpinnings are all going to be broadly the same, but really tailoring it to the specifics of where your patient's getting on therapy requires ongoing measurement into understanding their experience, and that's what's missing today.
So, Kirk, can you paint a picture of, you just said that this measurement aspect is missing today. What are we seeing today in terms of trying to assess the efficacy or effectiveness of these types of programs? Are there other kinds of efforts going on to measure those now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say there are, I think, a few common ways that we'll see folks trying to get this understanding of your end customer, or whether that's patients or HCPs. For high touch patient support services, that commonly will be a kind of QA of just listening to calls after the fact and correcting with anyone who's doing that. Another thing will be just having a sense of, we have folks in the field who are speaking to HCPs. We have folks on the phone who are speaking to patients. So we have kind of a general sense from these conversations of what patients need, or they're doing some sort of periodic measurement of once a year or something like that. So those are how folks are generally trying to get at this idea of understanding the experience. But I think, in just hearing what those are, you can understand how those are all kind of vague. These come in periodically, and it's not actually defined in having this goal of let's understand the experience. So there are 3 ways that we recommend that you can improve the experience. In how do you improve these support services? You have to have a dedicated approach to improving that pharma customer experience. And there are 3 ways that we recommend doing that. Madeline, why don't we jump to showing you what those 3 are?
Sure. And as I'm bringing that up, I mean, I know that one of the biggest differentiators these days between different drugs might be that uh, that patient support services program, right? So it's really important to be measuring, and we're going to go walk you through the steps here, but it's important to be measuring that to make sure that you're differentiating on that aspect.
It's true, and that's a great point. Is that a lot of pharma companies are offering these services. So as far as differentiating yourselves, you do need to understand how are our services being received and how can we improve them. Because as far as the medications you're providing, the die is already cast there. I mean, these aren't being adjusted. So the medications that patients are being provided is the kind of baseline. As far as their experience gaining access to this medication and how that fits into their day-to-day lives, so it cannot be something that's so cumbersome, that's where your support services really need to stand out and make it just a part of the easier part of day-to-day life.
Hi, it's Madeline. Thanks for joining us for PeopleMetrics Live. If this is your first time watching, PeopleMetrics Live is a weekly live webinar session where experts from our team answer your questions about customer, employee, and patient experience measurement and management. And sometimes we show you how you can achieve your goals using tools within our experience management platform. We've been doing this for over 2 decades now, and this is a great way for us to share our knowledge with you. You can sign up for upcoming sessions of PeopleMetrics Live at www.peoplemetrics.com/events and bring a friend.
So with that, let's jump to these 3 ways, and there's a kind of who, what, when, where, why framing we've given to these, and let's start with the first of these 3. The who. Now, generally with these programs, the first way that you can really elevate it is make sure that you are collecting this kind of experience feedback across your key stakeholders. And when it comes to patient support feedback, that means listening to your patients, to your HCPs, and to caregivers, to all of these audiences. Now, one way the way we've seen this kind of done incorrectly, or for folks who are still ramping up, they might just do one of these audiences. You might say, I'm just reaching out to patients, or I'm just reaching out to caregivers, or just the HCPs. However, you do want to either have a goal to ramp up to reaching to all these audiences, or to just start reaching out to all 3. The reason for these being is that the ultimate end customer is the patient. They're the ones who you really need to meet their needs. However, this is a kind of cascading effect of what ultimately reaches the patient is what is the experience of being a caregiver? How many tools do they feel they have at their disposal, especially when they reach out to their support team? And the same thing for HCPs. HCPs are the ones who also make patients aware of these programs. They're the ones who have to be aware within the organization of what to tell patients to do. So it is very important to survey them on what is your experience with our support program, to make sure you're adequately meeting their needs and that they feel comfortable enough to pass this information on to patients. And I guess, Audrey, any thoughts on this who stage?
Yeah, definitely. I think, Kirk, what you said made a lot of sense about maybe you're just starting with one of these, and then your plan is to ramp up to make sure that you're reaching out to all 3 of them. And that's fine. I just want to drive home the fact that if you're not thinking of this holistically, and that your patient's not the only one involved here with onboarding and maintaining adherence to the medication, that you're going to have a blind spot in what you're doing. And so you're going to have this great patient support services program, but you might not be doing what HCPs need, or the caregivers might not have information. You don't know. So it's just so important to make sure that you're reaching out to each of these groups and likely asking different types of questions. It's not necessarily that one questionnaire or one question is going to be one size fits all for each of these different groups. You have to be strategic about what you're asking so that you're getting the most out of your program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely kind of as you're saying there, kind of you need these different questions because their needs are very different. I think for the clients that we have where we're asking across these audiences, what they're giving as improvement suggestions for the support teams are radically different, where patients are generally focused on kind of support for a community and how they can learn more about their condition and access to their medication and financial needs. HCPs are generally very focused on how can we make this process as seamless as possible for my office so it's easy, it doesn't take up as many resources since we have a lot of patients that we need to support, and that needs to be a streamlined process. And so ultimately, if your support team is supporting all of these audiences, you need to ask all these audiences how well you're actually doing that. And if you're not, then you're missing out on a very big sphere in any one of these.
That's a great lead into our next section here, the what.
Well, for the what, generally, so once you have these audiences, if you're reaching out to all these audiences, the second thing that you need to get very correct, and the second way you need to approach this is to ask a mix of questions to these audiences. It does help to have, and there's three things that we say make up this mix. One, you do want a baseline of questions, and within patient support services, we do have our own benchmarked PX15 questionnaire, which is geared towards those basic components, as we mentioned, of financial access, just physical access, administration, those elements of a support program. It's helpful to have that so you understand how do we compare to other companies. And so you do want to have some sort of baseline that can be benchmarked where you say, how do our services compare to others in the industry? Beyond that, you do need something that is program specific. Not really, no two support programs are the same. And so you do need to make sure if you have specific elements that you are rolling out because you think it will enable you to better serve your patients, HCPs, and caregivers, then you need to ask about that and ask about it specifically to make sure that it's delivering as you're anticipating. And then the final component in asking questions is you need to ask open-ended questions. Provide some sort of text box as you're reaching out. Since so much of this feedback will be precise, it will be specific elements of these experience that's hard to tease out with just numeric responses. You need to get free text to have folks respond. Any thoughts on that, Audrey?
Yeah, definitely. I highly recommend using the baseline PX15 questions. It's really useful to get a baseline both for your own program and to be able to benchmark against other programs that are doing similar things in the industry, like Kirk mentioned. And then definitely, what is different about your program? You want to ask about that. And is it landing? Is it making sense for your patients and HCPs and caregivers? And you're not really going to know that unless you're collecting that feedback. And then finally, open-ended questions give patients or HCPs or caregivers the opportunity to provide you with very specific feedback about why they're feeling a certain way, why they rated something a certain way that is really valuable for you that you'll be able to use in making strategic decisions about the future of your program. I do want to address adverse event reporting. We do occasionally receive information about adverse events in the open-ended question answers, and we report on that. We send that back to the pharmaceutical company based on their adverse event reporting protocols. And so, we're well aware of that. We're always compliant with that. And it is something that we have to think about, but I don't think that it should be a reason that you don't ask open-ended questions. I think the benefits outweigh the risk in this case.
Did you know that you can watch past sessions of PeopleMetrics Live right here on our YouTube channel? All you have to do is click the link above. Be sure to check them out for answers to dozens of questions, along with stories, tips, short tutorials, and best practices from our team of experts. Click the bottom right corner of this video to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an update.
We have clients that get to do it differently. They're, for some reason, you may not want to include open-ended questions if you have specific risks you're looking to avoid. However, this is for most patient support services, this is the best way to do it, because with that open-ended feedback, we do tend to get very specific, where from the HCP side, you're going to hear about specific lines on a form of this is, you made a change to your prior authorization form. This is what makes it difficult for my office to now complete this, which impacts their likelihood to continue, with this process, because if it's difficult, this hampers their ability to prescribe and assist their patients. So to get to that level of specificity, open ends are essential, and that's something that we have heard from HCPs. It's just very specific line level detail on what they would change. Those program specific questions, I would say, are also critical, because there often is something that is either an app that only you provide, you have collected information on this specific offering, perhaps as you were developing it, to find out, will this help you meet a need? But with this type of feedback, it's generally, I want to know about your experience now that you've actually used it, now that it's practically part of your experience. So you do need to collect those program specific questions to get that level of detail.
I had one question for you both before we move on to the last part of this three-step three-part process, which is, can you just give an overview, high-level overview of the PX15 and what that baseline set of questions generally looks like, just for anyone that isn't aware of the PX15?
So the PX15 is a questionnaire, a patient support services questionnaire that PeopleMetrics developed, a 15-question questionnaire that goes to patient services, which is why it's the PX15. And it is comprised of the key drivers that we found in our time in patient HCP feedback of the patient support services experience. And it generally is broken up into sections that are based on what we've heard most from patients and HCPs of what drives their experience. And it starts to baseline with questions on financial access, as that is certainly the bedrock of patient support services. From there, moves up to the components of physical access of, where the pharmacies where I can access this, if it's an infusion center or if it's an injection, especially. Moving up from the physical access is the actual medicine administration of, do they feel comfortable and understand the administration process, and do they feel they can handle this and we're given enough information. And then up from there, it moves up to a community of support, where after patients understand, what we find is after they understand financial, where to get it, how to administer it, they're generally looking for something beyond. They're looking for support, a broader network of support for their condition, which they look to their patient support team to help guide them to. So the community support, and then the final thing is confidence in treatment. That's what we found is the bedrock of a good patient support program, and you can certainly use that to find how well do we deliver across those elements of financial, physical access, administration access, support network. How do we deliver on these fundamental patient needs? That provides a good baseline, and then you can add your own program-specific questions from there.
Thanks so much for the overview, Kirk. And I know we've tied that confidence, the tip of the pyramid of confidence, to prepare treatment in another webinar that we've done that you can check out on our YouTube channel about that PX15 and how that preparedness for treatment is a great metric to take a look at in the pharma patient support services arena. So are we ready to move on to the last one here?
I think so. Audrey, do you want to take the last one?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, the last one here is when. And this is really, we're talking about when are you reaching out to patients and HCPs and caregivers to ask them for their feedback. And what we're saying here is that you should be doing continuously and at point in time milestones in the patient journey, or at least on an annual basis. When we say continuous, though, if you have a patient services support team and you have patients or HCPs reaching out to them, you should be continually collecting that feedback. So anytime there's an interaction with a patient and your patient support services team, you should be sending a feedback request to them or a survey invitation in order to collect that feedback, meaning that you're not just waiting until a certain month or a certain time to do it, but anytime there's an interaction, you're continuously collecting feedback. That's the first thing. And then also at a point in time, whether it be annually or at a certain milestone in the patient journey, after they've onboarded or after they received a shipment or after some milestone, that's another good time to be collecting feedback to make sure that everything's going the way that you expect it to in their patient journey, and that they're able to maintain on the medication and they don't have any problems. So that will allow you to get feedback continuously, that you continuously look at, and that at specific points in time where you can adjust things based on the feedback that you get.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And I think a big thing when we come across these pharma support programs, they may be doing some type of annual or that point in time feedback, which is honestly what pharma companies are more used to. They're used to, I'm going to have a study that I do, collect, field this study for 2 to 3 weeks, create a report, and then that's how things are. So pharma companies tend to be more familiar with that. And if you're doing any kind of feedback, it will be that. The ongoing one is especially important. every day we are having these interactions with patients and HCPs, and we're following up with you after the fact to see how well we delivered on that. That's really key to this Pharma CX of intentionally creating the experience, measuring it, and then managing that last part. You can't really manage an experience on an annual basis. You have to manage it on an ongoing basis.
Our founder and CEO, Sean, is writing a new book all about creating, measuring, and managing customer experiences in the pharmaceutical industry called Pharma CX Secrets. In this book, Sean presents 20 easy to implement but powerful strategies that you can use to turn your pharma company into a truly patient-centric organization in both commercial and clinical settings. Pharma CX Secrets will be available on Amazon soon. Go to peoplemetrics.com/pharmacx secrets to sign up to be notified.
Look, there's nothing wrong with those point in time type of studies. You're getting valuable information. It's just that it takes a long time for you to get it. You're doing, you feel it for 2 to 3 weeks, and then you wait for how long? A month, 6 weeks, even longer before you receive your report. And how much has changed in that amount of time versus these continuous things that are ongoing. You're getting feedback daily. You had somebody who had an interaction today who might even provide that feedback same day, and you're able to, in pretty much real time, address what feedback they gave you. You can use it as a coaching opportunity for someone who interacted with your patient, or you can instantly make changes if you need to with information that's out there if it's not correct, or you can help patients who are struggling right now with getting their medication or receiving a shipment or whatever it might be. You can help them in real time. And so that's what's so valuable about that continuous feedback. You're just getting it in a time where you can actually make an impact and help patients versus kind of retroactively looking at what was going on and then making decisions for moving forward.
Right. And I think what's great about having, when you're doing a program like this, the information is still coming into a system like PeopleMetrics, where you can still see the information in aggregate the way that you would see a market research type report. So there's still, and I know we did a whole PeopleMetrics live about the differences between individual and aggregate feedback and how you can use both of those when you're doing a voice of customer program. But a lot of the information that you would get from a market research type study would be available in the aggregate when you're doing a program like this as well. So before we close out, let's do a couple questions that I've seen come in here. I'll stop sharing my screen. And so I've got a couple questions here. One is, how does this work if I'm using a hub or not doing it in-house?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we have clients who are doing that, and basically we get the information from the hub about who interacted with them, and we run the program the same way. We send invitations to whoever interacted with the hub to get feedback that way. The coaching or the changes that you make might look a little bit different because you have to coordinate with whoever's running the hub and make changes that way. But the program itself is still extremely valuable, and you should move forward with it.
Kirk, I will throw this second question to you, which is, do you recommend collecting this kind of feedback from patients, HCPs, caregivers for a more digital or app-based support program?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's very similar to, just because you're using a hub, that doesn't mean, it's not on you. And just because you don't use case managers, that doesn't mean you're not providing an experience. If you buy something online, if you never interact with anyone at all, you're generally going to get an experience survey about how was that experience. And however your model is for interacting with patients and HCPs, whether it's primarily digital, primarily case manager, in-house or outsourced, or if it's a hybrid model, all of those are fundamentally to the patient and HCP an experience that you are providing. So you need to make sure you collect feedback on it in an ongoing way, as we've recommended. Use these 3 ways to collect feedback, and that's how you can have a comprehensive understanding and make sure you're getting the most out of your investment.
Yeah, and I wanted to loop back to earlier, Kirk, when you were saying that some of what you see now is more, when it comes to assessing the effectiveness of these types of programs, it's more like listening in on phone calls and giving feedback that way. And to me, I'm thinking of, oh my gosh, a phone call is just one part of the vast amount of experiences that are happening when someone is interacting with your patient support services program. There's your website, there's interacting with the case manager, there's, getting to the pharmacy or whatever it is. There's a rich amount of experiences that are happening all the time. And so the ability to have something where a program like this, where you're able to measure on all those different things in a scalable way, just sounds great. So wanted to just loop back on that. I want to thank you both again for this easy to follow overview of those 3 best ways to improve pharma customer experience, or CX, via your patient support programs. And I hope that this has been a valuable conversation for everyone that we've got on the line here as well. I'll make sure that when it goes up on our YouTube channel, we include a link to download that diagram of the who, what, and when, so that you can use it as a reference when you are assessing and optimizing your own feedback measurement program. And on behalf of everyone here at PeopleMetrics, thank you for joining us for PeopleMetrics Live. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe right here so you never miss an update. And have you checked out other sessions of PeopleMetrics Live yet? You can click right here to watch them all. I'll see you there.